Hey there, I'm Savannah. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm a former educator. I left the classroom in October of 2022, and it's time that teachers' stories start getting heard and our voices are heard so that changes in the education system can start happening. So I'm going to read some stories, give my commentary, and let's get started. So this first one says, I'm a middle and high school choir teacher. Here's some backstory to all of this. Back in September, I was in a pretty severe car accident that left me with a head injury. Luckily, I'm relatively okay now after physical therapy and whatnot. When I was out, I struggled incredibly hard to have sub-plans for non-music subs other than having them do a study hall or having them watch a music-related video. This caused some frustration in my absence, and I tried my best to fix the issue. While I appreciate the support I've always gotten from this principal, I can understand their frustration with me and my lack of planning. First of all, I'm glad you're okay. Second of all, I don't understand why teachers are expected to have sub-plans and to be working when we are out using our sick time or with a serious injury such as this. It doesn't make sense and it's not fair, and teachers should not have to work for free. We're using our sick hours and we should not be contacted or be required to do work while we're outside of work, especially when we're sick or using our sick hours or vacation hours or whatever, or maternity leave. What other job is like that? I don't know. Fast forward to this week, I had my middle and high school choir concert on Monday night and it went very well. Unfortunately, I was out sick yesterday because there's a horrible sickness going around in my area right now and I caught it. Another issue for teachers is that we get sick all the time. We are exposed to so many germs throughout the year. Since we just had our choir concert, I thought the kids could use a day to catch up on work and rest their voices. Today I was pulled into my principal's office and was told how my substitute was visibly upset that I didn't have any specific plans for them, and my principal agreed with the sub. Now I'm not here to complain or disagree with them because they are correct in feeling the way they do. I don't agree with that. If you are sick, you should be able to leave, and there's curriculum for a reason. Your district should have curriculum that your sub can just pick up and read from and distribute that to your students. But oftentimes teachers are required to take the state standards and create our own curriculum from them. And I know a lot of teachers, especially myself, would just go to work sick or not feeling good because it is so much more work to prepare for a sub than to just go in and teach. You would have to write an absolute novel on your classroom. Students with IEPs or 504s, which is students with special education or accommodations, how your classroom runs, your classroom management. It's a lot just to take a day off as a teacher. It's really a lot. I was told by my principal that while they've been empathetic to my situation, being in an accident, and last year there was a similar issue with my mother's health, that it cannot happen again or my position at the school will need to be reevaluated. I know the easy answer is to step my game up and make sure I plan better, which is something I'm already working on with some colleagues, but I just want some feedback on if anyone has been in this situation when they're on such thin ice with an administrator and how you've dealt with that mentally. I'm really sorry that you're going through that, and it's a huge bummer, and you should feel supported by your admin no matter what. And when admin asks us how we would like them to support us, this is what we're talking about. And oftentimes people forget that teachers are humans too. We have things going on in our lives. We have our own kids, we have our own families, we have emergencies, we get sick because we're working with so many kids. It's just really a bummer that your administration is not supporting you, and I'm so sorry. Okay, this next story is hilarious. Should I apologize to my admin? Admin has been trying to sell this give 50% even if students don't turn anything in BS. Which means if a student doesn't turn anything in, they don't do the work, they automatically get 50% in their grade book, because the idea is that it's easier for them to dig themselves out of a hole if they have 50% instead of 0% in their grade book. At PD, when admin asked us to decorate cookies, I replied, "Can I just not do this and get 50%? And the whole staff cheered. It was hilarious, but probably not the best way to vent my frustrations. I was about to send an email apologizing and asking to schedule a meeting so we could discuss alternative, more ethical options to the 50% rule, but do you all think I even need to apologize?" No. If your whole staff backed you and admin has not contacted you yet, I think you're in the clear, and it's very clear to admin now that nobody agrees with the 50% rule. Trigger warning for school shootings. There's an active shooter in the neighborhood. I'm a first-year teacher. Prior to teaching the school year, I was having massive anxiety and paranoia attacks that I had to attend therapy for. I think this is a huge part of why teachers leave, and something that teachers do not talk about enough is the anxiety and paranoia we have of just being at our jobs, being in the classroom. It is traumatizing and it's very scary, and it's on the back of our minds all day long while we're supposed to be teaching all day long. I'm incredibly paranoid when it comes to school shootings because some of the personal things I've gone through in the past, and because I used to read so much about these types of things to the point where it's driven me to become this paranoid. Today we went into a hard lockdown while my kids and I were on a bathroom trip. Just so you know, a hard lockdown versus a soft lockdown. A hard lockdown means that you were supposed to be in your class with your students, lights off, in a corner somewhere safe. Soft lockdown means that you can remain teaching, but all the doors need to be locked and students cannot walk around the campus. 18 5-year-olds and 5'2", 135-pound me. I rushed them into the class, closed the blinds, and had everybody lay down while I stood alert. I cannot imagine how hard it would have been to round up 18 5-year-olds. It's really hard to do that, and hopefully your classroom was close to the bathroom. My mind was racing like crazy, thinking about what I would have to do to keep everybody safe, what I could use as a weapon, where we could go to escape. My kids were scared, I was scared, but I had to pretend like I wasn't. That's also very hard as a teacher because you are expected to be professional at all times, and we can't even show our emotions during times like this. I know I would be having a very hard time holding my emotions back, but you have to so that your students can stay quiet. And I thank the Lord above every single day that I never had to go through this when I taught first grade, because it was so hard to keep my students quiet. I don't know if they would have been able to do that, and it would have been terrifying. I also had a class full of 34 first graders, so that's another story for another time. I really don't know what I would do by myself with all of my kids if the situation had been worse, God forbid. The other classrooms have assistants, but I was alone and I felt alone. First of all, you should not be alone if you are teaching 5-year-olds. You should have an assistant or a paraprofessional. I want to take some kind of training or something because I don't feel like I would have been able to do anything. I have pepper spray, but will that really help? I feel so bad for thinking like this. I was just really scared and want to feel better about being able to protect my kids. This is a lot to unpack here. Okay, first of all, you want to take some kind of training. Your school should have given that to you. Almost every school that I've worked at has given a training on how to react if there's an active shooter. And this should be a training that is consistent across the board for the whole nation. All teachers should receive it. Secondly, you should not feel bad for thinking like this. You should not feel bad for having paranoia and anxiety because your life could be in danger when you are at work every single day. That's traumatizing, and that's what teachers go through, and that's what we think about. And I remember driving to work thinking about what I would use in my classroom, how would I protect my kids, where would they be in the classroom if something happened, and it's scary. The school that I was at previously this year and last year, this year they decided to call a lot more lockdowns, and they would do lockdowns even if there was like a safety issue, like maybe a student fell and got blood all over on the cement. And even calling a lockdown for something like that is traumatizing to teachers because you don't know what's going on outside your classroom. Oftentimes they won't even tell you. For probably 3/4 of those lockdowns, I had no idea what it was for. And one time they called a lockdown on the intercom and they did not say if it was a soft or hard lockdown. So I had no idea if I should be teaching still with my lights on or if I should have my lights off and be sitting with my kids in a corner ready to protect them. So that was a lot to go through, and that was one of the reasons why I decided not to teach there anymore. This next one says, just ranting, so our school follows a policy of LICE is fine and parents don't have to tell anyone and kids don't get sent home if they have it. That's insane and should not be allowed. Found out one of my student siblings has had it on and off 5 times this year and actively has it right now. Been at the school the whole time. Her brother in my class doesn't have it to the best of my knowledge, but I'm still so angry. How is this the policy? How is this just okay? I don't freaking want it, but I'm now stressed silly about it. Literally washing off my clothes, bedding, and everything in the hottest water. Paranoid I may have brought it home. One thing I learned working in lower elementary grades when I taught first grade is that you should keep your hair up because kids will have lice. I had a student who had lice 4 times in a school year, and all the kids that sat next to her also ended up having it. So I would have to line up at that time I had 25 students, take them all to the nurse, have them all get checked, and any student who had it had to be sent home for a few days until they didn't have any more and they had been treated. Also, if your student has had it 5 times, you have to call CPS. That is neglect, and calling CPS is another thing that teachers have to deal with that is really emotionally draining and sad. It's very sad. I've had to do it every single year that I've taught. It's just something that you have to do. You're a mandatory reporter. But oftentimes your school will not train you on which situations need to be called in to CPS. Unfortunately, your administrators have not told you that you need to report this, and it sounds like they don't really care. I relate to this next one so hard. Anyone ever been bullied by their students? I'm a beginning band teacher and was demonstrating on instruments that are not my primary, and this kid kept blurting out things like, "You suck, who taught you how to play? You should get your money back. Trash," or "Are you sure you're qualified as a teacher?" First off, I know I am objectively fine at playing the basics / everything I have to teach on these instruments. I'm far better on my main instrument, but I get by just fine on everything else. This student has gotten under my skin before and knows how to push my buttons. I've written him up and called home countless times. Absolutely nothing changes. He gets sent right back to class, and mom just says okay to everything I tell her. A student's job is to push the boundaries, and they will do that, but some students take it way too far. One of the ways that teachers are absolutely not supported by admin is when we send a student like this to them and they get sent right back to class. That pretty much teaches the student that they can get away with it, nothing's gonna happen. And if mom isn't doing anything, you're not seeing any changes there, it's because she's also struggling with it at home. I was furious today and I couldn't even teach the class after I kicked him out. Just told the class to put their instruments away and printed out a worksheet and held back my tears till lunch. I had a similar situation to this when I taught my first year of high school. I had a student who was so extremely disrespectful to me, and admin was not very supportive. Parents were not supportive. So by the end of the year, for the last couple weeks of school, I had to put a desk out in the hallway right by the door where he could still see the board, and that's where he sat. He was not allowed to enter my classroom, and if admin wasn't going to do anything about it, then he was not allowed to enter my classroom. And that worked well for me, and it actually made it a much more enjoyable class, but I would get so sick and feel so anxious whenever I had this student because we had block periods, so I would have him for 2 hours at a time, and it was very hard. I learned from teaching middle school and high school that you have to have a freaking heart of steel because these kids will roast you, they're disrespectful, and you can't show emotion, you cannot show weakness, and you pretty much just have to be witty and know how to counteract that. A parent wants to meet with me because her daughter is late to her study hall. 8th grade. I don't teach this kid. She's just with me at study hall for an hour every other day. I wrote her up today because she met the threshold for tardies. The mom insists on meeting with me. Why? All the kid has to do is not be late. There's literally no discussion to be had. Teachers do not have time for this. We have too much going on. There's a solution already to this problem. Your student needs to stop being late, and that's that. Okay, there is an update to the story. OP says, the meeting went well. I had my vice principal join me. They got started while I retrieved the student from another class so she could join us. My VP shared some of the juicier details caught in the hallway camera about this student. I went in expecting to defend myself, but I didn't have to at all. My VP did most of the talking. Mom was very supportive and was more about trying to get her daughter to make better choices. I'm mostly happy that your vice principal was able to kind of take that meeting head on and support you. When we tell admin that we want support, this is what we're talking about, because this teacher doesn't need to say anything in this meeting. This teacher did nothing wrong. The teacher was following school policy, and honestly, the teacher didn't even really need to be there. This next story is something that I've never really heard of before happening at a school, so if it's happened at your school, let me know in the comments. I'm curious if this has ever happened to anyone else. Do schools have the right to dictate the brands of clothing you're wearing? Kind of a weird one, but hear me out. I normally thrift my clothing. This day I was wearing a longer skirt, a 3/4 length plain shirt, a cardigan, and boots. A coworker loved my skirt and asked me where I got it, and I said it was from the thrift, but I checked the tag on the bottom of the skirt and it said Romway. Now I know Romway isn't the best place to buy clothes, but it isn't like I shopped there directly. It was just a nice skirt I found at the thrift for $4. Well, a senior teacher pulled me aside and said basically along the lines of, this school only supports ethical fashion choices for its teachers. And I was taken aback. I asked if thrifting was suddenly unethical, and she dodged the question. I said that I only checked the tag because a coworker was asking and interested, and it wasn't like I was having a conversation with a student. She said it didn't matter, and I shouldn't wear the skirt again. I've raised it with the principal, but I haven't had a response. I'll go to HR if I need to, but this is weird, right? Yes, I think this is weird. I don't think this is normal to be happening at a school, but also a lot of teachers thrift their clothing because we do not have a salary that allows us to buy clothes from quote unquote ethical brands. When you're thrifting, you're not supporting that business. You are buying it secondhand. I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. That's all I have to say is this is ridiculous, and no, schools do not have the right to dictate that, and I would wear that skirt once a week and be sure to walk past the teacher. All right, this is the last one for today. Students know they'll pass no matter what, and it's killing education. Why has it become possible for students who often have the aptitude to do work to not do it out of sheer apathy and still move on to the next grade? I understand that holding students back should be something done sparingly, but when students are fully capable of working but choose not to do all or most of a class's core work, how does it help them or anyone else to insist they move on to the next grade? Doesn't that just reinforce their feeling that it's all the same either way? And isn't it ultimately unfair to them because they have the capability to learn, but now it'll be harder because future classes will build off material in the work they didn't do? There's an unspoken push on teachers to just push students through. When I taught first grade last year, I requested that 5 of my students who did not know their ABCs and could hardly add and subtract at the age of 6 be retained and have to do first grade again. And every single one of those students got pushed through. Even one student whose parent agreed that they should be in first grade again somehow still got pushed through to the next grade. It's absolutely ridiculous. I've seen this in lower elementary, I've seen it in middle school, and I've seen it in high school. And it is just an unspoken push on teachers to get kids to the next grade. It looks better on the school, on their passing rates, and the person that's going to suffer the most is the student, unfortunately. And teachers hold back students because we think it's in their best interest to retain them in that grade so that they don't struggle in the next grade. Oftentimes parents will fight us on it. They don't want their kid to be retained, and it doesn't make sense to me. You should want to do everything you can to ensure your student is successful, and if they're not ready for the next grade, they're not ready for the next grade. I've known lots of people who have been withheld a grade and they turn out just fine as adults. And I agree, this is killing education, and the standards are so low now for students to pass. With that, this is the end of the video. If you would like to write in a story, please do, so that your voice can be heard. If you'd like to be anonymous, just put that in the beginning of your email. My email is down below in the description box. It's super easy to submit a story. Just send me an email. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.